Thought I'd take you for a ride through some nice rural farmland. That's a horse ranch over there. There's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 8 horses out right now. Might not be able to see them because they're kind of far away and this is a wide angle lens. But anyhow, this is a response video to a question that Skazz asked about the weight of bikes, because the fact he's fallen over and dropped some bikes before, and what I think about what kind of weight you should have when you're having that kind of trouble. It's not so much the weight of the bike as the balance of the bike, I think, is what your main consideration is now. There's two different types of cruisers that I've had enough experience that I can probably give you a good feel for at least my personal experience, and that's the parallel twins style cruiser engine and the Harley V-twin kind of engine. Now, the Harley style V-twin, and a lot of them, when I've worked on people's bikes and test rode them, tend to have a way lower center of gravity and tend to not tip over on their own. I mean, they tend to be very stable. In fact, I think one of the reasons why you'll see in some of the old pictures of people riding Harleys, especially in the 60s and 70s, you'll see guys going down the road standing on the seat, because the bikes with the low center of gravity just naturally tend to balance, whereas the motorcycles like the one right now, I'm on the Triumph with a parallel twin, they have a higher balance point, so they don't tend to naturally want to balance themselves. They'll pretty much, if you lean over, they'll pretty much stay in that position until you bring them back right side up. And as far as my experience with teaching people, when they tend to drop their bike or fall over, always tends to be low speed maneuvering, and the two types of maneuvers I'm talking about are coming to a stop and having your handlebars not straight ahead, having the handlebars cocked to one side or the other in a turn, coming to a stop, and then end up falling down because the bike rolls backwards, or slow speed turns in the city where you have a real narrow street and you have to turn really tight. Now, I think to a certain extent, if you've got a bike with a higher balance point like a parallel twin, you can sometimes get away with a little more if it's really lightweight. If it's like, say, 300 pounds or so, you can kind of, if it starts tipping over too much and you're not going too fast, you can kind of hit the brakes and kind of muscle it back up again and do kind of like a funny duck walk along the pavement and get away with it. So sometimes weight can be a factor, but once it gets above about 400 pounds, pretty much either bike, even the ones that have a lower center of gravity, are pretty much going to go down with you. So it can work to your benefit. I would say, especially if you were able to, when you were learning, get a hold of a real small parallel twin, like say a Honda Rebel, or I've just seen Suzuki's come out with almost a carbon copy of the Honda Rebel style, which it's a twin cylinder engine, very, very lightweight bike. So at low speeds, and especially when you're doing the thing like pulling around in a parking lot or something like that, and you forget when you're a new rider and stop with your handlebars cocked to the left or right and it starts drifting back on you, you can use your body strength then, because of the weight of the bike, and kind of just heft it up and hold it up again. I've done that before when I started out. I started out with a CM 400T. Now that one was a little different too, because it had a lower balance point than most parallel twins because it was not a full frame. What they did in that case was they took and used the engine as part of the lower frame. Your frame actually was split into two pieces. They bolted it to the front part of the lower engine and the back part of the lower part of the engine, and that was actually part of your frame member. So it would actually mean that your bike's balance point would be sitting lower, just because of the fact they could sit the engine about another inch or two lower into where the frame would have been under the same circumstances. But all things being equal, I still think most of your V-twin engines for your cruisers tend to balance a lot better going around the turns, and kind of are very forgiving. So that would be my 2 cents as far as balance and the weight of the bike. It can be in your benefit if it's a very, very light bike, but once you get 400 pounds and above, if you make a wrong mistake, all the muscling in the world, I think even if you're a 6 foot 200 pound guy, which I'm a lot smaller than that, but even if you're a bigger guy, that can it's just going to go where it's going to go at that point. But the main thing is just to do a lot of slow speed maneuvering too. I mean, there's plenty of time in most areas that people live. Even in my area, I can go to parking lots of industrial parks and stuff like that. And I even do it on this bike, since I've only had this bike since September of last year. Believe it or not, even with 30-something years of riding experience, I still take a lot of time and go to parking lots and industrial parks and just do slow speed maneuvering just to get a feel for how this bike leans, because every type of bike is just a little bit different, and I want to get familiar as quick as I can with this bike, and it just takes practice to do it. So I just take the time to go to places, practice low speed tight turns, practice stopping, things like that, so that I really get a feel for the way the balance is on this bike. But this is definitely, this Triumph that I'm riding right now is not a beginner bike. This would be not a good choice at all. It's got a high balance point on it, and it's definitely above the 300-pound range. So even in slow speed maneuvering, I think if this thing started tipping over on you because you had the handlebars cocked at slow speed, I think it would basically just go down. Now, I'm thinking that probably this one, I don't want to actually put that to the test if I don't have to, but I'm thinking this one I probably could, by myself, pick it back up again pretty easily if I had to. But when you're talking about the bigger ones like the Harley Road King and stuff like that, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but I guess you do have to just hope there's somebody around that'll help you pick up your bike. So anyway, that's my response to Skazz about different motorcycle size, weight, balance, and just basically all the slow speed practice you can possibly do, and even more. And don't ever think you reach a point to where you don't need it. I'll be doing a lot more on this bike too. I mean, I'm taking it on the first long trip come August, so I think all the slow speed practice in the world that I can do is always just going to make me a little bit better than before. So take care, everybody. I'll talk to you later.